So I was hoping to lay by the pool, but your towel guy over there told me I have to rent a chair for $50.
Well, sir, if you would like, we have a great free lounge section right across the street.
Wait, isn't that just your old broken pool chairs placed next to a dumpster?
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast. This is Glenn Hausman. I am absolutely excited to have you here today. Thanks so much for joining me each and every week as we talk to some of the brightest names in hospitality. And you know it by now. I'm speaking to a lot of industry influencers. I'm talking to a lot of industry legends and great CEOs. Before I introduce our big industry influencer of today, I just want to make sure that you're following me at Traveling Glenn on Twitter, at Instagram, and all the places on the internets where you could find me. Make sure you read my stuff at hotelmanagement.net. And big news, Here to Stay.tv is finally launched. I'd love for you to check out all of my video interviews on that channel. And stay tuned, because right now I'm working on a giant, new, beautiful, awesome No Vacancy podcast website. I can't wait to get that bad boy up and going. And also, my last plea, visit Kevin Barry, our sponsor. Kevin Barry Fine Art, they are a great sponsor, and you're going to want to hear from them. The stuff that they do is absolutely fantastic. You'll learn more about them at a commercial break. But boy, I think that was the longest run-on sentence I've ever said in my life. But I'm going to ask Mr. John Hach, he's a senior analyst with TravelClick, whether or not, John, you think that I just talked too darn long. How are you, sir?
Excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. And I do not think you talked too long, Glenn. I thought it was fine.
Okay, good. You know, I get a little nervous. As the people listen to this, I will be on a vacation, but we're recording this just before I go away, John, and I am stoked. And I'm also getting a little hyper because I'm going to get to go away. You know, this is going to be my first time going away for 2 weeks in a row since my honeymoon. Can you believe I never take any time like that off?
Well, congratulations. You sound so young. You're probably still a newlywed. So enjoy the extra time off.
And thank you for your sweet, sweet lies. I really appreciate that, John. I think we're going to hit it off just swimmingly. So, John, you going anywhere on vacation this year? And if so, where's TravelClick telling you should go?
Well, I travel quite a bit for business. So TravelClick keeps me active, the majority of the time. And, I don't mind saying this. I am a baby boomer, so I'm in kind of the, for those golfers out there, I'm kind of in the back nine of the course. Yeah. And when we go on vacation, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, at least you're using a golf reference and not a baseball reference, because I'm tired of hearing those every time I go to a conference about where we are in the industry cycle. So please continue. I want to hear all about your baby boomer goodness.
Yep. So, I travel probably, close to 40 weeks a year for TravelClick on an average year, because I cover the world. Mm-hmm. But, in my spare time, my wife and I are fortunate to have 2 grown children and 5 grandchildren. Wow. So our goal in life is to make this bucket list happen now. And I'm happy to say that we took the family on 2 vacations this year. And it's an interesting experience because you literally have, teenagers, preteens, adults, and then we're not quite geriatrics yet, so we're still ambulatory, but it's an interesting journey when we go on vacation now, because the group of people I travel with is 11, which is really important for your audience out there, because I can tell you this, Southwest Airlines, if you have a party of 10 or more, you qualify for a group. And I would encourage everybody to at least price that option out for party sizes, because when we went to Florida recently, the savings of booking through the group desk at Southwest was incredible. I know that they're not a sponsor, but I do owe them the plug, because it was a great way to have an extended family vacation.
Hey, I'm a big fan of plugs, and hey, John, you're not a sponsor either yet, but here we are. So I'm all for that. So let me ask one more question about Southwest. It's for a group of 10 or more, but what about me when I get back from this vacation? If I am the size of 10 or more, do I qualify as a group? That's what I want to know.
You think you'd have to call Southwest on that one. So I actually had one of our parties said, hey, Grandpa, call Southwest, and I was, they actually informed me of this. But just an interesting tidbit, because I've been in the industry for 38 years, and I was unaware of that kind of group policy.
Yeah.
But it really did make a substantial savings on the airfare portion. So I know we're here to talk about hotels, but most people fly into destinations, so that was a good opportunity for savings on a group.
I think that's great. And John, we are here to talk about hotels, but the fact of the matter is, this is the stuff that I love. And I told you, I warned you just before we turned off the mic that this conversation might veer off topic, and it already has. So that makes me really super happy. Before we do get into the topic, where did you take that Brood of 11?
The last one was in Orlando, and it was actually an Airbnb.
Oh,
so I say that I have the occasion of said this publicly. I've spent more than 4 years of my adult life at one hotel chain, and that's right, more than 4 years. And so I've not only consulted in the industry, but I traveled extensively, and it was very interesting when you start to think about alternative lodging, the impact of Airbnb and HomeAway, and the family needs that you have when you have an extended party going into a destination. And, frankly, Glenn, we wanted everybody to stay under one roof.
Yeah.
It was nice for my wife and I to have that extended time. And when we looked at the options, and, Marriott does a very good job of actually offering up their timeshare inventory. And we've actually done that in the past. We don't own timeshare, but we've actually stayed at some Marriott and actually some Starwood timeshare. But for this particular trip, my son had found this house that actually could accommodate 11 people in 6 separate bedrooms. So it was expensive, but when we started to look at the cost trade out between hotel and this particular house, we opted for that experience.
Well, yeah, and I think that really goes to the crux of how people want to travel and experience travel these days, especially when it comes to multi-generational getaways such as the one that you're talking about. I mean, I am on my vacation currently as people are listening to this show, and we have multiple hotel rooms, which in a way I think kind of takes away from that experience that I'm craving, which is to be with my family, because as you know, we're all time-starved professionals. So when we can be with the kids, and in your case, the grandkids too, it's something that's really important to spend as much time together. So I think that's one of the reasons why Airbnb is starting to take off, at least when it comes to the leisure travel side of it. And John, you mentioned Marriott. I think they're doing some interesting things right now, including playing with the idea of a room that has multiple bedrooms surrounded by a single common space. I think that is an interesting idea that's got some serious legs to it for the future.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hotels understand this issue very well. I mean, Airbnb is not new. The company, I believe, Glenn, is about 9 years old. And so this whole concept of alternative lodging and the sharing society, whether it be in a hotel room or in an Uber or a Lyft, I mean, it's here to stay. This genie's out of the bottle. And I think from a hotelier perspective, hoteliers are doing an effective job, as you mentioned, like Marriott, competing with it. And then, if you look at just the evolution of Airbnb, and there's this thing called a superhost now, so it's someone that, actually rented out their place, 10 or more times in a year. And boy, kind of, looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, walks like a duck. The superhosts are becoming more and more, as operators of lodging,
Right.
So a superhost, it's a decent occupancy when you can rent it out, approximately at least once a month.
I know. That's pretty incredible. As a matter of fact, I was at the Global Business Travel Association's annual conference in Boston very recently, and the hotel prices were so extreme that I got me and my producer for this Here to Stay TV project a 2-bedroom Airbnb apartment, which would have been cheaper than 2 hotel rooms, and we found it a great place because we had plenty of space to spread out and edit our videos and do all of that work together. So I'm finding as time goes on, it's becoming much more of a viable opportunity and option for that matter as well. And I will add one more thing about that, John. I do agree. I mean, these rentals have been around forever. It's just that Airbnb tapped into that technology piece of it, and using all of that information and data, we're able to find the right audiences, and more importantly, have the right audiences find them. I think that's really the big difference and why the sharing economy is really coming to the limelight today.
No, absolutely. And you mentioned something that we follow very closely at TravelClick, because I think one of the unique things about TravelClick for your audience that may not be familiar with us, we are a long-time e-commerce provider of services to the hotel industry. Our legacy really is working with hotels to make them more profitable. And a lot of the tools that we've worked on, enhanced, and created over the last 5 to 6 years are, dynamic pricing tools that really help hoteliers compete in the marketplace. Just as you said, when there's a Global Business Travel Association,
right,
GBTA, coming into town, hotels have compression. And that, increases almost exponentially sometimes the price of a hotel room. And I think you gave the audience a really good depiction of kind of that trade-off a consumer will go through in, should I stay at a hotel or should I look at alternative accommodations? And that's really the sweet spot of what TravelClick does. I mean, we really work with hoteliers during periods of compression, through the peak periods,
right,
but also the shoulders to make sure that they're pricing appropriately in market.
Okay, so let's get into a little bit about the state of the business that you're seeing in terms of the data that you have. So data is obviously changing the way hoteliers do their business, right? It's allowing them to really understand what's happening in the future on a much deeper level. So it's kind of changing the rules of the game. How do you see hoteliers using and leveraging data today as compared to maybe just 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, it's changed from trailing data to forward-looking data. What makes our data very unique is it comes directly from participating hotels' property management systems. So unlike competitors, our data is not it's not reported. It actually comes through a data feed. So there's no manual intervention at all of the numbers. The numbers come right from the property management system. And what's unique about us is it comes up to 365 days in advance. And, there's so much changing within a marketplace. When a group comes in, when a large convention comes in, you really can't look at historical data and figure out, how should I price? What's interesting, you go back to the competition with Airbnb, there's dynamic pricing tools that are offered now to individual owners, software that they can buy so they can compete with hotels. But with our data, which is called Demand 360, what it really allows the hoteliers to do within a given market, within a given, latitude and longitude, is to really price appropriately in the future. And that changes not only because of groups, because of, conventions, but it also changes because of, good things and bad things that can happen. Sometimes a market like San Francisco right now is doing incredibly well.
Right.
But if you look at Houston, Houston's been in the doldrums for years, and unfortunately it doesn't look like it's improving. But, Glenn, to be specific about the question you raised, it's really about being competitive in the future and not being reliant on trailing data. It used to be people would say, do you have a crystal ball? Well, we don't need one anymore because we've got the data to help us plan the right price at the right time.
So how does data help you do the right price at the right time? I know I asked that kind of already knowing, but I'm sure there are a lot of folks that don't get it.
Well, they're so important in this business is what we call the booking window. And it's, how many days in advance is someone going to book a hotel room?
Right.
And it changes dramatically. And so when you look at the normal reservation window, it does, and historically, going back, to my younger days, Glenn, you would look really at airfares. You'd look at, did the carriers have a 7-day advance, a 14-day advance, 21-day advance? And you could correlate your pricing and guess about it in line, lockstep with the way the airlines were pricing their advance purchase. But now, as we know, and definitely we could add this to the conversation about where we're going with cancellation policies, these things are changing in real time. And if you don't have a forward-looking data product, you are significantly competitively disadvantaged. It's almost as if you don't have a website. It's almost as if you're still displaying the same type of user interface on a smartphone or a tablet that you are on a desktop, responsive design, the mobile audience. So there's mandatory tools that are needed in the sharing economy. Everybody talks about big data, but I think we go much farther down that path as we make it actionable business intelligence so that when you look in front of the reservation window, you have a logical price point that can get you, your maximum revenue per available room night.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've done some consulting work and content development work with companies that are focusing on utilizing big data and machine learning to help you really understand what that best pricing is for any given moment at any given day. And to not have that in your pocket seems almost foolish right now, because basically then what you're doing is you're kind of throwing darts at a dartboard blind and hoping you hit that bullseye, right?
That's exactly right. And the brands, if they talk about the brands that participate in Demand 360, all the major brands participate. So it's Marriott, Starwood, IHG, Hyatt, Hilton are all participating in this initiative where they're reporting their data. The piece to your audience for the independent hotels that are listening in, you don't want to be competitively disadvantaged. And I mentioned the brands, but you also don't want to be competitively disadvantaged to the owner-operator that's renting out their condominium down the street. And you really need these pricing tools to make sure that, within this advanced reservation window, you're pricing appropriately. And a lot of times, if you don't know a convention or a group is coming in, you might actually underprice an opportunity, and you'll have great occupancy, but frankly, you're leaving money on the table. So it's important for independents, for everyone to have these tools, because they really are today. It's not a luxury. It's really a necessity to price appropriately and make sure that you're maximizing your revenue.
Absolutely. And it's one of those issues as well. It's like, hey, you might be getting a great price for your hotel, but you don't know how much you're missing out on. And then also, conversely, you don't know if you start to drop the price, maybe you're dropping it too much and giving away money for no particular reason whatsoever. So what are some of the things out there that you're seeing right now? For example, one of the things that really annoys me is, and I'm sure you could relate to me with this as a baby boomer, is those millennials keep getting all the headlines while me as a Gen Xer is being completely forgotten about. And I feel like your generation, which is really still powerful in the spending side of it, is being ignored. So what's going on out there?
Well, thanks for defending the baby boomers as a Gen X.
Someone's got to do it. It's not going to be the millennials. They're too busy having their day in the sunshine.
Yeah, well, and again, I look at my family vacation, and we've got everything. We've got what's now called digital natives, which means that our 3 and 5 year olds can operate an iPad better than my wife and I. And so you've got this whole cross spectrum of demographics that are consuming. And as you mentioned, the baby boomers are retiring. It's been reported that my generation's retiring up to a rate of 10,000 people per day. Mm-hmm. Now, if we still have a reasonable retirement, we want to travel, why wouldn't you want that audience, right? Your generation is in the prime of their life, in your prime earning years. So all demographics, all generations are important. There is more, share of wallet opportunity with, the millennials today. And I think, one of the studies I saw last year, if you just looked upon it in terms of the numbers for the first time, the millennials in terms of just per consumer consumption actually eclipsed baby boomers. So it's a valid argument. And, I speaking as a baby boomer, I don't feel like we've left behind. But the point is, and I think this goes to an underlying question you've asked of, what type of environment are we in now? And where this gets very interesting when you look at demographics and who should be, prioritized is, I tend to be a little bit more optimistic, but over the last, I'd say, Glenn, 18 to 24 months, I've become a little bit more pessimistic about the growth. Right. When we were coming out of the recession in 2008, even in 2012, 2013, people were saying, is it going to be a double dip? Yeah, they weren't talking about ice cream, right? They weren't talking about ice cream. It was a double dip recession.
That's much more fun.
Came out of it. And we came out of it relatively strong. But, what we saw going into the election last year is that the organic growth really started to move and started to trail and go from the mid-single digits to almost flat. And what we've seen in the forward-looking data that we have that now actually goes into 2018. So I've actually seen data that goes into the first quarter and partially the second quarter of 2018. And I don't want to go back to the ice cream analogy, but it really is it's a rocky road, Glenn. It's a rocky road.
That's a shame, because I was hoping for mint chocolate chip. This is not good news, John.
It's not good news. It's not good news. We're having fun with this, but it's a dilemma for hoteliers, because if you think about it this way, we know there's more competition with alternative lodging.
That's right.
We haven't talked about this, but we know that the immigration piece and the tourists that are coming into the United States, they probably don't feel as loved as they did, 4 or 5 years ago with different administrations. And then you start to look at this and say, there's also new builds, Marriott, Starwood, Hilton, all are building new hotels and markets. So you've got a lot of supply coming in. You've got more competition. And, we haven't talked about Zika or Ebola, right? The infectious disease and even threats of terrorism. So when we look at the data, and again, I'm looking out in the future, I'm not talking about the past, it is a inconsistent it's a weakening, and it's a very sporadic environment that we are seeing into the final, quarter of this year and also continuing into next year.
Yeah, fair enough. I feel, and tell me if you agree with this or you don't feel comfortable responding at all, but I feel that the hotel industry took too long to accept that times were good. And when times were, then times were good for so long. And now that we're at the point where inevitably, because we are in a cyclical industry, and for those of you who are listening that don't understand that, what comes up must come down. That's the story of the hospitality life. We have to slow down at some point. And after 7, 8, 9 years or whatever craziness, it's been 7 years, I think, of increased, room rates and profitability, it's going to have to turn. So one of the latest things that I've been doing, especially when I speak at events on stage, is talk about how you can protect your pricing power, one, and also start to realize that we are in a declining market. Even though RevPAR is still growing, it's slowing, and I like to think of it as a decline. So that way, when we do inevitably tip and things start to go the other direction, you won't be caught by surprise. So I'm glad that you all had the good times. Now's the time, I think, to gird yourself for a little bit darker times because all of the reasons that John said. John, do you think that I'm kind of right in what I'm saying there?
No, I think you're spot on and giving great advice, and I'll dig a little deeper into this on something that concerns me. When you look at, and you said this, and our numbers correlate with what you said, Glenn.
Cool.
When you start to look at making your RevPAR on price increases and not occupancy, right? So we're trying to get as much rate out of the customer as we can, and it's a price value proposition for a consumer.
Right.
You realize it's going to be costly to go to Boston for a convention. It's going to be. Right. I was in San Francisco last week, and I was amazed at how high the room rates were holding. Mm-hmm. So as a consumer, you go in there and say, "Did I really get enough out of the stay?" Right. Come back there on leisure. Is the destination affordable? And we're in a difficult time right now of price value consideration. And I echo your concern. Mm-hmm. And especially goes back to what we're talking about, alternative lodging. Yes. Because that cost becomes a consideration. And let's face it, that person that's renting out the condo, they have a Keurig in the unit too. Yes. And what's interesting, you looked at the consultations that Airbnb are giving. They're actually asking the host and the superhost to upgrade the coffee experience. Oh boy. So the competition is increasing, and I think as hoteliers, we just need to be sensitive to the fact, especially as you said, when we start to increase rates, that price value proposition has to resonate properly in the consumer's mind so they want to come back again. And that's a great way to put it, that price value proposition, because customers will pay for great experiences, but that experience that they're looking to have has to go beyond the threshold of what you're trying to charge. And I think that's a kind of a sticking point for a lot of hoteliers. They don't necessarily get that at this point, because as a leisure traveler, I might be more inclined to, if Houston had an amusement park I wanted to go to Houston as opposed to another city with an amusement park I wanted to go to because of those hotel rates. I think we're getting to that point where customers can only bear so much, and then you add that layer of political insecurity that a lot of people are thinking. I think that folks are starting to retreat a little bit inside themselves emotionally. I don't think there's any question about it. I think that's a reality, and I see it staying around for a while. Yeah. People like, let me get back to the good times. Mm-hmm. Well, we've had some as you said, we've had some really good years, and, some of those years were unexpected. Right. People were really concerned about going back into a recession. It didn't happen. And now when you start to look at, all of the potential headwinds, especially when you start to look at tourists coming into the United States, and saying this, this present administration that's now, under a year could be here another 3 years. And so the inbound tourist may have continued concerns that will last for the next 36 to 40 months. If that happens, you're going to have to become much more dependent on domestic growth. And to the point you're making, you need to be very, very cognizant. You need to really think through how high you want to increase those rates, because you want the consumer to come back, and we haven't talked about this yet, but you want them to come back to your website and not through an intermediary. Right. Of course. We talk about that an awful lot. I talk about this on the show. I talk about this during speaking engagements. That direct booking thing also seems to be the first or second thing that comes out of the lips of the CEOs at all of the major events that we go to as well. But
Any practical advice on how to get people to actually book direct instead of just saying encourage them to book direct next time? Or is that even not a possibility?
No, it is. I'll stick up for the brands here.
Yeah, please do.
When you look at the book direct initiatives and the push on loyalty, and actually part of our Demand 360 product, we track loyalty, the presence of a Hilton Honors or Marriott Rewards. We track that in a reservation record, so we can see a direct correlation between these initiatives and the number of people that are in these programs, and it is working. And so that's obviously a way to get book direct, okay, for the brands. For the independents, frankly, it's a little harder. And again, it goes back into making sure that you're priced competitively and using forward-looking data. The key here is to really take advantage of the tools that we're talking about, because these tools are stable. They've been enhanced. They've been in the marketplace now for, well over probably 8 to 9 years. We've made significant capital investment into the usability of these products. And having that price, especially if you're an independent, and you don't have the ability to have a large loyalty program, but having that price, and it goes back, Glenn, to what you said about making sure when you start to look at increasing prices that, you're not trying to overcharge the customer and getting to a point where people will avoid your website because they don't think that you've got the value in the marketplace that they can find through an aggregator.
Right. Absolutely. And one of the things I would encourage you hoteliers out there to think about is not just how much you're charging for the room, but the overall value a particular customer means to you. Meaning, are they buying food and beverage on your property? Are they even buying a lot of Snickers bars from the front desk? Whatever that might be, that is a thing to factor in as well. John, before we wrap up here, how's that group business doing? Because I found that everyone was bemoaning group business for a while. Then it surprised everybody. They seem to have done great, but I get the sense that group is starting to recede a little bit. Do you have any insight on that, perhaps?
It is. What was holding us probably a little bit more positive note last year, going into not necessarily the back half of 2016, but the first half, is group was strong.
Yep.
And now we see, and again, the visitor and convention bureaus, the destination management organizations, they're very, sophisticated organizations, and they're competing more for this business. So it's not that group is weak, but we're seeing it shift from city to city,
right.
And we're seeing the large conventions play this thing in an incredibly savvy way. So you can't just say, okay, the electricians are going to come in at the same time next year. You've really got to be looking quarter by quarter, looking at your own and working very closely with your visitor and convention bureau, but making sure that you're taking advantage of those peak periods, but you're not taking for granted. And it goes back for what you said. You get a group into a hotel, and they came in and maybe they aggregated through an intermediary.
Right.
But you can get them back if you have strong value proposition. And I love what you said about where we're at in terms of it's not just the rate, but you have to look at the lifetime value and the on-stay value of the customer, and really mine through your data and really look on book direct repeat initiatives with those people that are high-value guests. I mean, look at the airlines, what they do in their high level of the frequency programs. They're masters at it.
Yes.
And I think there's opportunities for hoteliers in terms of recency, frequency, monetary value to do identically the same.
Beautiful. I absolutely love what you have to say. And one more comment on that group business. So I just want to underscore, it's not slowing down, but there's a lot more competition. I have noticed, now that you mention it, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, a lot of cities and smaller towns building convention centers, expanding convention centers, really getting into that fray. So instead of having to make up a number 10 cities competing for your business, it could be 20 cities competing for that business, which makes it a lot more complicated for each and every individual city to be more successful with the same group of people, right? That's what we're talking about?
That's exactly what we're talking about. You look at the fact that they're building, meeting space, exhibition space, but also the carriers. I kind of started with Southwest Airlines. When they're flying nonstop into El Paso, you're not necessarily competing with Houston and Dallas anymore.
Right.
So you've got to look at these other entities and say, how do I bring these people back? And they go, again, if they're coming in on a convention, you want to bring them back into your area, and you want to make sure that they're thinking of your hotel in terms of their overall awareness of what's in that vicinity.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. So anything else that you want to say? And if not, just why don't you give us some shameless plugs on how to find you?
Well, I'll go right to the shameless
Good.
plug if that's okay.
No, of course. That's why this is the form. I feel like I need some shameless plug music to cue it up, so you know it's time to do that.
It's just very, very easy. It's www.travelclick.com. And again, TravelClick, I don't know. I think everyone can spell it, so I won't go that shamelessly into this, Glenn. But I just want to say, it's been a pleasure being part of your podcast today. And
thanks.
Hopefully you'll invite us back for future sessions.
Absolutely. So that's travel with a Q, right? I'm not sure. I'm confused now. All right, TravelClick.com. Be sure to check them out. And we will have John Hach back here again one day. And hey, you know what? Maybe I'll convince you guys to actually sponsor the show. But either way, your information is great. It's valuable. And I really appreciate you being here. And guys, thanks for listening so much. I appreciate you being here too. Stick around because after this commercial break, I've got a great interview coming up and I look forward to all of you hearing it. So thanks for listening and be right back after this.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. And if you're like me, then I know that you love terrific art. Art that creates a sense of place. Art that tells a story of where you are. Art that adds a level of detail that you can't get anywhere else. And great folks that do this, Kevin Barry Fine Art Associates. You can find them online at kevinbarryfineart.com, and I highly encourage that you check them out. One recent project that I'm totally in love with is the Fairmont, Washington, D.C., where they created a custom project with a local artist, and they created some of this on site. They actually created a multi-dimensional wall sculpture from gold blocks, which is an abstracted map grid of the Washington, D.C. area. It's got different elevations to it and looks absolutely fantastic. It was done along with Deborah Forrest and Amanda Jackson of Forrest Perkins, which is now Perkins Eastman. And they all work together to create this fabulous new look. So if you want to create a fabulous new look for your hotel, or if you just love great art, check out kevinbarryfineart.com or give him a call at 310-945-2655. Let him know Glenn sent you.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
All right, everybody. I want to tell a little story real quick. When I first started out, I was in college, and of course, I had the requisite job at the Gap, and it was fun saying, "Hey, thanks for coming to the Gap," all of that kind of stuff. But that wasn't really satisfying enough to me, and it really wasn't going to help me find what my goal was in life in terms of finding the job that would really make me happy. Now, retail is a great business, just not for me. So I found it very unsatisfying. I went to the University of Maryland in the late 80s, early 90s, and I had a chance to do an internship at WPGC Radio. It was 95.5, and it was like the biggest radio station there, hip-hop station, and it was so much fun being a part of that. And even though I was an intern, I got course credit for it, and I got real-world experience. I got a chance to meet people, meet influencers, and I even had the opportunity, if you could believe it or not, writing the Saturday morning countdown show, which was a lot of fun. I got to write great things and sliding up the charts, 5 things, 5 spots, it's blah blah blah. So that was a lot of fun. I worked with Wendy Williams writing her show, and she went on to do a talk show, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows who's out there. And I'll tell you what, it really set me for the course of my career and really helped guide me. And I know somebody else who's had a lot of success being an intern and wound up making a career out of the company that she started with, and that is Ayesha Williams. No relation, I don't think, to Wendy Williams, but we'll find that out in a second. She's the Director of Talent and Leadership Development at Hilton. Ayesha, how are you, ma'am?
I'm doing pretty good today. I think you had a rockin' first intern experience.
I really did. Let me tell you how cool it was. It was really neat to be part of that hip hop culture, especially for a Long Island Jewish guy, right? So it was really great because I got exposed to a lot of different people. I got exposed to a couple of few different cultures, and I really had the chance to do things I probably wouldn't have had otherwise if I didn't want to volunteer my services. And you kind of did the same thing over at Hilton, yeah?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ended up doing the same thing, pretty much along the same lines as I did. I think it's just a love and a knowledge of what you want, even when you start out. And that's probably the toughest thing that this generation is facing, just discovering what they want. As a kid, I wanted to be so many things. I wanted to do so many things. I had so many dreams. And as I grew up through college and through the university, it kind of honed in on hospitality. And it's just a love for service, a love for being with people and seeing them enjoy themselves and just being around happy people. I think that's the thing that really turned me on to hospitality.
Yeah, I agree. And it's great that you find that thing. I was either going to do this kind of a career, but my other love, I really wanted to be an Oompa Loompa for Willy Wonka and work in the chocolate factory over there.
Everybody loved that movie, though.
But
Can't blame you for that.
That didn't work out. They're like, you're not orange enough, Glenn. And I did not feel comfortable with that. So I know, terrible. So anyway, Ayesha, one of the things that I find is interesting is we're in this world right now where younger people are having trouble finding what they want to do with their lives. And not only that, but they're having trouble securing those positions. And I'm a big believer in you've got to get yourself in there. You've got to work for free and you've got to show that you're worth something. And then typically those lead to opportunities you wouldn't have had if you just sent a resume in with 1,000 other people. Did you find that same type of experience?
I think I worked for free for half my life before I came to Hilton.
Right.
Just as you said, just to get that exposure, just to get that real world experience. And it's tough because, coming out of school, I remember coming out of the university, I thought I was going to make $4,000 a month right out the gate, and I was going to be the next food and beverage manager for the next great hotel company. And, as I started to look for jobs, it became very evident that I was going to start off washing plates, or I was going to start off in the kitchen somewhere in an entry-level position. There was no $4,000 job just sitting and waiting for me after college. And I think that kind of opened my eyes, and it takes someone to a place of humility to say, you know what, as much as I've studied, as much as I've committed to hospitality or whatever field you're in, and as much as you've amassed all that knowledge, you really need to get your hands dirty. You need to, put on your big girl pants and really get in there and get some core experience. So that was life-changing when I began washing plates at an all-inclusive in Jamaica, I think probably back in 2001. And today I'm not washing plates anymore, so that's a good thing.
I know. I think that's interesting that you bring up that point of thinking that you're just going to, walk in and have some sort of position of prominence, when the fact of the matter is a college education, no matter how good it is, doesn't always prepare you for what life is like in the career world. And you need to do those jobs in the bottom rungs in order to start to understand everything and get that education in place and get people to give you that real next opportunity, right?
Absolutely. And most of the management development programs out there, most of those management trainee programs require at least 1 full year of work experience. So, if you want to get in with some of those international or global companies for a management trainee position, you've really got to do the groundwork first to set yourself apart from the thousands of candidates that are applying for those management trainee roles. Those positions really do help you elevate. They help you move quickly through the organization. They get you high visibility. So so many people seek these positions out. So, I always say, keep building your skill set, whether it's a new language, a computer course. I personally think a second language opened the doors for me, just in terms of separating me as a candidate out of Jamaica for an international position within Latin America and the Caribbean. And don't give up. I mean, it's going to be so easy to quit, just quit your search and get depressed and think, oh my goodness, the doors aren't opening. I've had so many conversations with so many young people about really spending time identifying what it is that you want to do and then applying for those positions strategically. Don't apply for every single job, but really spend the time, do a really fantastic resume and get those resumes out. Most companies now, Glenn, don't take don't take those hand-delivered resumes. You've got to do it online. So find a way that you can visit the company that you're interested in, bump into someone in the parking lot. You know what I mean?
I know. It's funny you should say that. I laugh because when I was applying for jobs, when I was first out of college, my strategy was to do my resume on a unusual color. So at least it would get noticed, right? But now with everybody having to, apply via computer, it's all the same, and you really can't stand out. So I like the idea of tracking people down and trying to get to know them in that way, because you have to stand out from everybody else. And if you do what everybody else does, you'll never stand out. Wow, I should go into politics with a phrase like that.
Yeah, that was pretty well said, actually. Very well said. And there are tons of companies, and Hilton is one of them, that really provide kind of like this space where you can bump into people on purpose. I mean, apart from using LinkedIn and other social media to kind of get in the door and make your presence felt, you should really, kids out there, graduates, recent graduates, even folks looking to switch jobs, should be on the lookout for any events that these businesses have. Because Hilton had in May a Careers at Hilton Week, and they have that every year. And during that week, we showcase all the opportunities available in the hospitality industry for youth and other job seekers. So, it's a global event, and hundreds of young people within each location joined to learn all about those diverse career opportunities in the industry. And, many people don't consider hospitality as a field that they should really go out and look into, but there's so many opportunities in finance, in sales, in revenue, in training, and human resources. Apart from that, it really does give you an opportunity to test the waters and figure out what you want as a young person.
And I think that's important, is to try a lot of different things, because you may think that you love something, but then you might realize that it's not for you. And by dipping your toes in all of these different things, you might realize that, here's a track that I never expected to go on. I never would have thought that I'd be doing a podcast. It just kind of was a natural outgrowth of everything I did over the years. Of course, I graduated way before this technology existed, but it's so I encourage everybody to go out and try new things, which is even though I worked at the Gap, at least that got me to know that was not something I was interested in. And I love hospitality because Ayesha, it's like basically every single discipline that you would want under one roof.
Yeah, exactly. And it allows this generation really to take some risks, and what I find is that with these campus graduates, and they vary in age. It's not just the millennials or the Generation X's or the Ys. It is just a diverse group of campus graduates who fear failure. And they really want to get it right the first time. And if you look at how the technology space has grown and the technology industry works, they celebrate failure. I don't know how many versions of the iPhone I have, but it just keeps getting better. I'm sure the first one wasn't great.
No, maybe at the time people thought it was great, but in retrospect, it probably sucked. Yeah. But Google is a company, for example, that celebrates that culture of failure.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really interesting, because I think for me, while I feel like I've done okay in my career, I feel that fear of failure probably has prevented me from a lot of successes and opportunities earlier on that might have taken me down a different and possibly more exciting path.
Yeah.
So how do you not get scared S-less with something like this? Because, we're all nervous about that sort of thing. We don't want to fail, even though failure is not the end of the world. But I think we feel like a lot of times we get a job, if we screw it up, that's it. Our whole lives are over. So what do you tell people to not freak out about that?
Well, I think it's important, and I always go back to the beginning, because you have to examine why you're scared. Is it because you don't feel you have the requisite skills, you don't have the capabilities to do the job, and really take a look at what it is that you want. Because if what you want is right behind those doors, then open the door.
Right.
If what you want is not behind the doors, then yes, you should be very scared.
Yeah.
Because this is not something that you want to do. This is not the path that you want to take within your career.
Right.
So it really does come back to that introspective questioning around, what is it that I want? Am I prepared to do this? Have I prepared adequately? Do I have the capabilities? And do I believe in myself?
Right.
And if the answer is no to all of those things, then the question is, what can I do to feel better about this next opportunity, or what is facing me? So I think it's going to be different for everyone as they answer those questions. But I think it's a good place to start, just being honest with yourself around what's ahead.
Yeah, and take an honest assessment of what you are good and not good at, and understand if you're not good at something. Is it because your programming is not that way? Like, I'm never going to be a great athlete, right? But maybe I just didn't put enough work into something either.
Absolutely.
And I think we need to be honest with ourselves in order to better our work ethic and how we find success through our work by really taking stock of who we are and what we're really up to.
And I love that you said that, Glenn, because when you think, I asked someone this just the other day, I said to a colleague of mine, what is success for you at this stage in your career when it looks as if you've accomplished so much? And I was really expecting to, dig deep into this and get some juicy information. But what I did get was made me sit and shut up, which I hardly do, and think. And
just don't do that on this conversation, please.
And he said to me, well, Ayesha, success for me right now is being able to not get on a plane every week. Success for me right now is me being able to move to another location away from the corporate offices and just be in my own space and not in the rat race anymore. Right. And so he gave me like a list of things that were so Zen-ish. And I was like, wow, success is really different for each person, and just depending on where they're at.
Right. I mean, you definitely set your goals high. For me, success is getting out of bed in the morning. Then I feel really great about myself. Maybe I should think about better goals than being conscious. Okay, so now I've completely gone off the rails here. That's what happens in some of these conversations. But okay, so all right, Ayesha, I feel like one of the dangers that we're seeing right now in society is a tendency to blame others constantly, right? And I think that's something we need to be aware of. And I know you're not prepared necessarily to answer this question, but is there any sort of test that you could do internally to make sure that you're being honest with yourself and not blaming external circumstances when really you could have done something to better your situation?
I just think that's a brilliant question.
Thank you.
Well, there's a model that I follow as it relates to accountability and behaviors that are above or below the line as it relates to delivering on results. And for me, you have to, and there are four pieces to this. You have to see what role you've played in the outcome, whether negative or positive. And you have to own that whether the outcome was negative or whether it was positive, you played a role in it. There's some action that you could have taken to stop it, to prevent it, which you chose to do or not to do. So that's the first piece. See where you fit in the outcome of whatever it is that you're looking at. Whatever result that didn't happen or happened, what role did you play or what role could you have played?
Right.
And then you have to, and the second piece now is to show some level of ownership. And so beyond identifying, hey, I could have done that and I should have done that, but I didn't do this, then now I have to say, well, what level of ownership can I demonstrate around getting this result fixed? So that's that level of ownership now that you've identified that you did play a role. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to take some level of ownership around it. And then the third step is to move into that solution phase, which is all about, well, I know where I could have done something. I know what action I didn't take. I'm now prepared to take some level of ownership of it. So I'm going to roll my sleeves up and I'm going to find a solution. And I think once we take those steps and we move into the final step, which is action, which is the fourth and final step, then we can say that we're behaving in a manner that is going to achieve a different set of results.
Right.
So other people now, without applying those 4 steps, would just be moaning and groaning around, oh my goodness, this is not working out, I should have done this, or someone else should have done that, or my boss should have fixed this, or the company should have done that. And you know what? If you spend all your time moaning,
right,
that doesn't change the result.
It doesn't.
So
and
I think,
it'll also, people will see that in you and not really want to have anything to do with you if you're going to be that negative Nelly, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I got another question for you. How does office politics play into all of this? Because before I decided to go off on my own and do my own thing, you always had to worry about those politics, and it added a whole level of stress and complication because you do want to take ownership, you do want to stand out, but you're also dealing with personalities that may have a different expectation and a set of rules for you to succeed by.
Politics, I think, is everywhere, and in the office, it's a minefield, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the first steps that any young graduate going out there, anyone switching jobs or roles within the company or across companies, I think the most important thing for you to do is sit and observe.
Yeah.
Observe and see how people talk to each other, learn the type of lingo that they use, really get into who sits with who talks with who gets things done, you really need to spend some time in solid observation. And I say that because you have to identify who the major stakeholders are.
Right.
And identify who is going to help you with any projects or initiatives, or even just taking ownership on different items that might be on your desk. And just align yourself with these decision makers, And what I love to do is I love to talk about my kids.
Yep.
So I'll talk about my kids with someone I've never met before, and I'm doing it right now.
Yes, that's true. We've never met, and you are talking about your kids. You're right on. You have 2, I understand.
Yes, I do. One's 8 turning on 40, and the other one is 3 also turning on 40.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, they're very driven young ladies, let me tell you. But I talk about them, and I watch the faces, and I say, okay, is this person a family person? Are they going to tell me about their kids? And then if they just nod and smile and ask the typical questions of how old are they, and I go, okay, well, I need to switch gears. This is not how I'm going to break the ice today. Yep. And then I might bring up something I read in a magazine. I might bring up something that's happening in the social world. And then I'll just, I won't spend too long on either of the topics, but I'll watch the body language, and then I'll get my cue. And then I'll open up the conversation to find out when I see this person next, what am I going to talk to this person about outside of business?
That is that's great, Ayesha. I think you're just touching on something I want you to expand a little bit more on. It's not always about what people say. It's the parts that they don't say that you need to pick up on also. And that's where that body language thing is very important to be able to read correctly. Yes?
Yeah, and there are tons of courses that graduates can take on emotional intelligence and communication that will help them in those networking sessions. I mean, these graduates are being told by their campus advisors to go to networking events. And when they go to networking events, they do the typical 60-second pitch. They tell you about themselves in 60 seconds or less, And I think it would be the ones who really impress me the most at those events are the ones who say, hey, I saw on LinkedIn that you've done this and you've done that. Tell me more about it.
Right.
I'm like, what? You've been spying on me? But okay.
Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, everybody likes a little bit of stalking. It's when it gets to be too much, it's not so good. But I love it when people take an interest in what I do and have some sort of basis of understanding for it. And I think this is just thoughts coming to me now. Then I'm much more open in that idea exchange and wanting to share with them my base of knowledge and give them the tools that they need to succeed as well. It's an interesting point you make there. So I have another issue that I've dealt with throughout my career that fortunately I don't worry about so much anymore. I've always had a hard time balancing my job and my personal life, because I feel like a lot of the jobs I'm in, and maybe it's a New York phenomenon more than anywhere else, you've got to stay until the boss leaves. So you wind up going in super early. And then, I'd be working in an office in Manhattan years ago. I'd want to leave at 7:00 and people would literally be like, oh, you're working a half a day? It's really tough. So how do you manage to achieve a work-life balance while giving your all to your job and then go home and give your all to your family at the same time and take care of those precious girls?
Well, you know what? I think each of us in hospitality goes through a process of what we call paying your dues, where you do work long hours, you try to get as much experience as you can. You show that level of flexibility when you're just starting out to really say, hey, I'm in this to win this, I'm fully committed. And I think that whole landscape is changing. And I think this generation that we're seeing now is really pushing the envelope around what flexibility should look like. And as a company, we're really listening to this generation, especially within our scope and ability to do so. When you think about flexible work hours and you think about the opportunities to take paid time off throughout the year, and you think about all the other opportunities that we have for parental leave and all that great stuff, I think you see the companies really listening into the concern that our team members have.
Right.
They want to have that work-life balance. And I think it's important for you to find a company that appreciates that as well.
My boss is a real jerk right now, which is me.
You're your own boss.
Seriously, if I think
that's another call.
if I stop work before a certain time, if there are a certain amount of hours in the day, I just feel horribly guilty about it. I'm so terrible at this work-life balance. I think I'm going to need to take more instruction from you on how to handle all of this.
Well, you know what? I think overall, if you look at companies, you think that Hilton was selected as one of the 2016 Fortune 100 best companies to work for by global research and consulting firm Great Place to Work.
Also, number one best hand CEO you guys won for, too, for Chris Nassetta.
Go Chris Nassetta.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go on.
So absolutely, you want to find those companies that, treat their team members right and value the input that they allow the company to utilize. At the end of the day, the results that we produce as a company come from the hard work and diligence of our team members. So this box wasn't built in a day. And obviously, us delivering those exceptional service moments to guests really do come from us being able to hire the best people in the market who have Hilton DNA running through them.
That's pretty cool. So I guess what we're saying is you've got to find ways to stand out, make people recognize who you are. Then when you get into the job, take on responsibility and don't be afraid to try new things and fail at it, while also, making sure that you're paying attention to the way that people interact with each other and communicate with each other so you could find your best pathway forward. And be sure to, take a look around and, as the ladies say on that TV show, enjoy the view, right? So this
have to enjoy the view.
So anything else that you want to talk about on this particular topic?
I think as you grow in your career, always look to see who is looking up at you. I would like to close with that because I think it's critical that, you might be a campus graduate now, you might, be at various ages coming into the business, and you might have the opportunity to have an intern work with you. You might have the opportunity to have someone who is a direct report into you. Look at building that person up. Look at teaching them everything you know within a time frame, right? Don't dump everything on them, but try to really build their skills and capabilities, because as a leader, when you produce another leader who can produce another leader, that for me is success. That for me is career success. So, when I was interviewed previously, someone asked me what my role was, and I said, I'm now the Director of Talent and Leadership Development for the Americas, and I did run an elevator program, which is an 18-month graduate program, program that I started my journey.
You are an elevator graduate of them as well.
Yeah, I started off, 18 months in 2 different locations in Puerto Rico, in in the Dominican Republic. Through that journey, I really had some fantastic mentors. And now, just about 3 weeks ago, I handed over that program, the management of that program, to my assistant. So now my assistant is the campus manager and handles and runs that program.
Amazing.
So I just think, it's pay it forward. Yeah. And as you grow in your career, always look to see who can you upskill.
Right. And now that you mentioned it, you said mentor. That to me is really interesting. One thing I believe I learned a little bit later than I probably should have. I always used to have the attitude of, you don't want to interfere, you don't want to bother these people. But if you ask people that are more skilled than you, and have certain positions of titles and power, blah blah blah, if you ask them for help and to guide you, they actually like it and take more of a stake in your career than you would believe. So I would highly encourage you to get those mentors. And do you see the same type of thing as I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think they get more out of it perhaps than the mentee.
Yeah.
They tell all their friends about it. The mentee becomes dinner conversations. I'm helping this kid and I'm working with this kid and this kid's going to be great. And those mentors can eventually become sponsors who get you that dream job that you've been looking for. So mentorship is definitely the way to go.
Excellent. Before we go, are you of Jamaican heritage?
I am.
You are. Thank goodness. I need a good jerk chicken recipe.
Oh, let me tell you, at my house every Sunday is jerk pork and jerk chicken.
I'm so jealous. I went back in the day. I went on a press trip to Jamaica. This has got to be like 2000 or something like that, and I just love that country. And we went to one small town. I'm forgetting the name of it. It's where Errol Flynn used to hang out. Do you know where I'm talking about?
Yeah, Portland?
Yeah.
Portland?
Yeah. So it was great because we sat out on folding tables and folding chairs, and they had just fished and threw them on the on the grill, and they served it up like that. It was so amazing. And the jerk chicken I had in multiple locations, and the jerk pork was just so spectacular.
So good.
So I need you to.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I need you to be my hero here, and maybe you could send me a good jerk recipe, and I'll share it with everybody in the No Vacancy family as well if you like good jerk food. But I find it interesting that every one of my interviews always comes back to food. I don't know how that seems to happen, Ayesha.
That's very telling.
Yeah, it really is. Ayesha, time for a shameless plug. Anything else that you want to add? How do we find you? How do people get involved in some of these programs that you're spearheading?
Well, I'd love for them, especially if you are looking for a career within hospitality, the best place for you to find us is on LinkedIn right now. And I'm going to plug my colleague who's grown up with me over the years. Her name is Marla, MARLA .OLIU at Hilton.com. Marla.OLIU@Hilton.com. And she handles now the elevator program. So if you're looking to fast track your career within Hilton and take on a management level role through an 18-month development program or a 6-month development program, you'll want to reach out to her. The best place to reach her is on LinkedIn. So if you find Marla Aliu on LinkedIn, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn too, Ayesha Williams. I'm on LinkedIn. So see you on LinkedIn.
Well, yes, and I am on LinkedIn too. And if you haven't connected with me yet, connect with me on LinkedIn. Maybe me and Ayesha will get together and we'll help mentor you, get you a great career going at Hilton. Ayesha, I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Glenn.
And I want to thank everybody for listening. Be sure to hit me up online at Traveling Glenn on Instagram, on Twitter. You know how to find me on Facebook. And again, find me on LinkedIn. And make sure you share this show with 2 of your friends. Thank you for everything you've done. And I will be back next week. That is unless I decide to go get into the elevator program at Hilton. See you guys next week.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.